but so there definitely there have been and still are hoax poets, but I think the real scandal for me, sort of fascinating scandal, is that there is no hoax poetry. That there can be fake poets, but the fake poems that are ascribed to these fake poets turn out to be real poems, and in a surprising number of cases, often it's the case that in fact, I think in all of the cases that I'm going to be on this handout, it's the best thing that the hoaxers ever wrote were these hoax poems. So that to me says something quite interesting and provocative about poetry, that maybe poetry itself has something tremendously hoax-like at its heart, and that to be a real, to write real poetry is somehow to get awfully close to a hoax somehow. The second page is the Spectra Hoax, and this is now in the 20th century. The Spectra Hoax is much more of a very elaborated hoax. It is was produced by two poets, Witter Bynner and Arthur Fick Davison, Chicago Midwest poets in 1916, more or less, and they were reacting to the appearance of imagism in Poetry magazine and the anthology Des Imagistes coming over from London. And Spectra, you can see, is a very knowing pun on, instead of imagism, you have the spectrum, spectraism. The Spectra poets, they had a very elaborated biography, and if you turn the page, you have two examples of the work of Anne Knish, who was said to be a red-headed Hungarian Jewess who had driven 3 men to suicide. And she was written by Arthur. She was the persona of Arthur Fick Davison, it turns out, after the fact. What I think she is very much reacting to, and do I have it here? Is HD, the actual imagist. So first let's turn, I guess, to HD. And to narrate the appearance of HD to the Chicago literary world in the teens, if you read Poetry magazine and the first appearance of imagism in America very, very carefully, and you read the back material, Harriet Monroe does mention that HD is female. But if you're not as careful a reader and you just read the poems on the pages and look at the poems and look at HD, I think it's a little bit unclear what gender HD is. But the eroticism and force of the work, I think, is very striking. So just the first. This is a poem from Des Imagistes. Priapus. Priapus is the god of erections in old Rome, and there's the comic herms that are erections that are stone pillars that are 3 feet tall with comic faces at the top of them. That's the title of the poem, which is not a very ladylike title, especially in 1913 or whenever this comes out in poetry. Or in the next poem, Garden, I'll just read the first half of Garden. You are clear, O rose, cut in rock, hard as the descent of hail. I could scrape the color from the petals like spilt dye from a rock. If I could break you, I could break a tree. If I could stir, I could break a tree. I could break you. So who is speaking there? You know, somebody who's very stunned by the heat, very dangerous, very strong, somebody who has almost superhuman powers, who can both break trees and break the body of the beloved. I mean, it's a real sort of a S&M kind of poem. And then couple that with the initials HD, which really, it seems to me, hides the embodiment of the author. This is a very tantalizing and mysterious phenomenon, this imagism. Most students of literature, when they read about imagism, they read there was a little bit of a small essay on poetics, a few don'ts by an imagist, which mentioned three tenets of what imagism was: direct treatment of the thing, whether objective or subjective, no extra words, and don't write in a metronomic verse, but write in a musical phrase, all of which conduces to clear and minimal poetry. But there was also mentioned in that original document a fourth doctrine, the secret doctrine of the image, which was not spelled out and which had a very profound effect on some people, like Amy Lowell, who immediately flew to London and said, "That's, when I read about the secret doctrine of the image, I knew I too was an imagist." So I think it was both the powerful clarity and monosyllabic pressure of this poetry, plus the kind of the mysteriousness that surrounded it, this penumbra of mystery that surrounded it, that gave imagism its panache. And then now I want to turn back to Spectra, and made gave the Spectra poets the desire to well, did they want to parody it or did they want to imitate it? I think is the question. I just want to read one of the poems. It's the short one by Anne Knish, Opus 118. Well, I'll read that and one more stanza on the top. But first, Opus 118. If bathing were a virtue, not a lust, I would be dirtiest. To some, house cleaning is a holy rite. For myself, houses would be empty, but for the golden motes dancing in sunbeams. Tax assessors frequently overlook valuables. Today they noted my jade, but my memory of you escaped them. This is about as good as the Spectra poems get. And I think you can see these basically very straight-laced, boyish Midwestern guys who clearly have never eaten a knish, have never heard of what a knish is. But they're very smitten with exoticism, and for them, imagism was, I think, sexualized and exoticized, and just a mysterious doorway toward naughtiness and inscrutability. And so, yes, on the one hand, they were parodying imagism, but I also think they were actually doing what they didn't quite dare to do as poets. Let me just read you the end of Opus 134. No, I'll read you the beginning and the end of Opus 134. Listen, my friend, that you may understand me. In my earliest youth, I dreamed in hues volcanic. I saw each day open like a curtain of flame. Black slaves attended my waking moments. 3 ebony slaves washed sleep from my white body. 3 ebony slaves around my ivory smoothness folded the heavy robes of crimson and white. And as I issued forth into the blue vault of the daylight, a gray ape pranced before me, and a leopard crept behind. So there's that and the end. In a black hall, the black table shall spread far down before me, and all the feasters garbed in black. Then at the feast's height, I, arising, shall, with a gesture like the midnight, throw back my midnight robe and suddenly stand naked, the sole white flame of the world. So I think you can see why I say that Spectra was fueled by a desire for an exotic sort of cross-dressing or cross-undressing sexuality